Hey guys, so the other day I posted a review for a book called Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer, published last year, and now here's the sequel, just released earlier this month, called Seven Surrenders by Ada Palmer. Not only does this take what the first one does and expand on it, but it gives us all of these great climactic moments that the first one only started towards, to make this sequel a perfect complement and continuation of Too Like the Lightning. I want to say that I enjoyed this one even more than the first, but it's not exactly that. It's that there are two parts to a larger whole that really needs this sequel to completely satisfy what came before it. I found the first to be just immensely enjoyable, dense and fascinating, thought-provoking and rewarding, but really benefited from being able to pick up the second one right away. So by the end of both, and after at first, thinking the second one was better, I've eventually come to see them as better together. So while Too Like the Lightning leaves off at this great, satisfying revelation, what happens in Seven Surrenders really strengthens the whole thing immensely. You don't have to read them back to back like I did, but just know the second truly makes the first one even better, while also being fantastic on its own. I would advise not listening to the rest of this review if you have not read Too Like the Lightning, but rather, come back to the video later after you have read it to see whether or not for sure you'd want to continue. So we leave right off from the end of the first book, beginning helpfully in this one with this very, very great list of characters of all the people that we've encountered, and straight into an interesting viewpoint that we've not really heard from yet. Sniper, living doll and beloved celebrity. Mycroft's invited Sniper to speak on certain events to kind of start off the second part, which then lead into the continuation of the history that's being told from Mycroft's perspective. From the very last chapter of the first book, we all know now what the Senior Weeksbooth Bash has been up to, though it's not yet been revealed to the world. What was once a Bosch we spent great lengths of time with in the first book feels now like an ominous presence, sinister, a weapon, and those within it all co-conspirators. We suddenly get an understanding of so many of the conflicts that have arisen, and many of the plot threads thicken. We continue to follow all of the very important leaders of this future through the lens of Mycroft, and our understanding of them both deepened and muddied by their connection to Madame's brothel, seemingly a meeting place for all of them and one of their many shared secrets. And Jehovah Mason stands as a weighted presence amongst them, and to our narrator Mycroft, who we've learned many things about as well involving his crimes, Jehovah, along with Bridger, represents answers to questions to which really only Mycroft can speculate. We are continually privy to many different happenings. Mycroft's greater goals, the tension and dependence shared between all of these different hive leaders and Madame, the Senior Weeksbooth OS revelation, the 710 list and its effects, the true origins of Jehovah Mason, the consequences of Bridger's existence, etc. And this and much more is continued throughout the second half of a future history that is both grand in scale and ambitious in thought, even more so than you'd have originally imagined after reading the first half. Truly, you cannot get a really full sense of what this story is without reading this second book. You just got to give it a shot after reading the first one. I mean, I don't want to speak too much on the plot of this one, only that it really heightens and resolves much of the mysteries and threads brought up before it, and that it also adds so much more to think about going forward. From the beginning of Too Like the Lightning, we're aware that Mycroft's writing this history after it's already happened. So coming to the end, you see all these little bits of foreshadowing, and you realize what was meant when certain things were brought up in the first book. And it's so satisfying to see the plot thicken and then realistically lead into a conclusion. There's not actually a conclusion, as this is only the first half of the series, but what we do get is a seriously well-contained narrative of events leading up to what will inevitably be a story even more intense, more emotional, and more fulfilling now that we've gotten to see every bit of what led up to it. What strikes me most about these first two books, and specifically this second one, is how well balanced everything is. Two Like the Lightning does this well, but it's got far less of a climax. It's really only an introduction and a setup to everything, plot, characters, themes, while Seven Surrenders takes all that and just ups the ante with some fantastic intensity scene after scene. There's times in this where I just felt legitimately on edge or angry or devastated or just felt for the characters as they and the situations they're in truly feel real and fleshed out to their fullest. You can tell a lot of care and thought went into developing them. Their moral ambiguity, a theme for the book as a whole, is not just a plot device, but the result of how realistically dynamic they all are. This, mixed with the growing questions we've picked up from the last book, plus the new questions raised by the rising climax, gives a new and energetic life to this story that makes it even harder to put down than the first one. Ada Palmer's just done a wonderful job at creating a fully realized, layered world, society, cast of characters, set of themes, and satisfying plot that are provocative both altogether and in their own right. If you're interested in a future that's both amazing and scary, as our present would be to those of our past, a future where things are better in some ways but worse in others, and all of the many questions that presents, this is a series you must read. I mean, what happens when we both progress and regress, when life becomes easier but more restricted, when the world tries to move on from polarizing topics by censoring itself or stopping the conversation entirely, when tensions rise to their maximum, but it's even more open-ended what will happen because everyone wants to ignore that such a thing is possible, when a world that's purely reason experiences a miracle and no one knows what to do about it. These themes permeate these pages and work against one another, offering ways to find answers, but not the answers themselves, because it asks them all in a manner that is not preachy or one-sided, rather completely ambiguous, because that's what the answers are. They're left to interpretation, and we're given a world that, through its experiences over the centuries from now until then, has interpreted those experiences one way. It is now paying for it, be it good or bad consequence. I think these are the kinds of stories everyone should read and more people should be writing, because they really show what science fiction can do. Ada Palmer has shown us through this rich and nuanced series what a future looks like when it's as flawed and yet still wondrous as our own present. She uses the attitude of a past era, the 18th century Enlightenment specifically, to imagine a future one, wherein the questions have been changed in their approach back and forth, but the concern behind them are a constant throughout all of human existence. She shows that while the future may be bright in a lot of ways, there's still very likely much we'll have to learn and find answers for, and that some of the conclusions we end up at may not actually be conclusions at all, but forestallments on continuing the conversation. Basically, I think these books are brilliant. I'd be shocked if every reader didn't get something out of them as a whole, as not only are they just great stories with an intriguing plot and fully realized characters, but they're intelligent both in how they present ideas and in how they offer information to the reader so that we can come to our own conclusions. A lesser author would have approached these themes of religion, gender, society, philosophy, and war with a heavy hand and a one-sided opinion-based interpretation of what's right and what's wrong. But instead, what we have here is a seriously well-written, engaging, considered work of fiction that offers more and more the deeper you get into it. Uploaded simultaneously with this video is an interview with Ada Palmer, spoiler-free, in which we discuss her approach to writing this, what she was hoping to do with it, and much more. If you've not read the first book for a while and are hoping to get into this second one, what I'd suggest is kind of familiarize yourself with the character list at the front of the second book. It's very helpful to remember who everyone is. perhaps watch my interview with Ada to kind of be brought back into the mindset of the first one and of the different themes that are addressed, and then just kind of dive into Seven Surrenders from there and see if it clicks. If not, maybe you'll need to reread the first book, but I kind of doubt it's completely necessary. It doesn't really add any new characters or plot lines, just approaches them in some new ways, shows us some new sides to things, and so getting back into this world within the second book shouldn't be as difficult as you might think. Though, to be fair, I did get a whole lot out of reading it back to back, and I can imagine all of the little Easter eggs and foreshadowing done in the first one would be just a blast to see if you were able to even go back and reread them both after finishing the second one. Finish the second one, then reread the first and the second one. If you're an intense kind of rereader like that, you probably get a lot out of it. So anyway, I really hope that you'll give this second book a shot now that you've read Two Like the Lightning. Like I said, you've not even gotten a real sense of the full story and what it can be from just the first one. You've got to pick this one up too. Seriously, it's fantastic and does so much right. I love them both, but as a whole, these two together have made this series one of my new all-time favorites. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of it, and I hope you'll let me know your thoughts when you've finished. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Again, I gotta say, check out the interview with Ada. It was a lot of fun, and I will see you later with more.